How to get into GRC compliance. You're interested in IT or cybersecurity, you do not have a lot of technical experience, and you want to get into GRC. In this video, I'm going to show you guys exactly how to. My name is Julian. I'm currently a cybersecurity consultant at a Big Four, and I can say the majority of our work revolves around GRC. So what is GRC now? For the ones who don't know or have probably heard about this before, GRC stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance. Now, GRC is a domain at itself. In fact, it has grown into a domain and as a department as itself. And that's why when you apply for GRC jobs, now you actually see jobs that are called GRC. Because traditionally in the past, GRC was often a sub-component of compliance or law or risk and advisory. And even now to nowadays, GRC is still part of subdivisions or sub-departments, and having GRC as a role itself isn't as popular as it is today, as opposed to, let's say, 5 to 6 years ago. Now, more towards what is GRC. Now, GRC is basically governance, risk, and compliance. So what that means is you are basically the specialist who focuses on policies and oversight. So you understand the holistic and bigger picture. You do the risk as well. That includes risk assessments, vulnerability assessments as well. I will talk about this in just a moment. Risk identification as well as mitigation. And finally, the C is compliance. In compliance, we talk about the law, standards, the different types of frameworks that exist. All of that we will break down in detail. But let's go to the topic that is more important. What is in it for you? Because I assume you're watching this video and you're interested into getting into GRC. Now, the good news is, myself as a cybersecurity consultant, GRC is, if not, I would say 60 to 70% of my workload literally revolves around GRC, right? And so you might be wondering, in terms of your career, what or how can I be a GRC, and what does a job role look like specifically, right? As a general figure, here are 4 areas of GRC's jobs that exist right now in the market. We have the GRC analyst, the compliance officers, the risk consultant, as well as the IT auditors, okay? And so where as a GRC kind of a person, as a specialist, can you go, right? So as myself in a position as Big Four, you can as well go to a bank, you can work in the government, fintech, consulting firms such as BCG, McKinsey, as well as the big tech companies. All of these industries I just mentioned have these 4 roles, right? In any country, doesn't matter where you're watching this video from, but I guarantee you that they exist, right? So let's talk more about GRC and why GRC is, so interesting in general. Because of the demand of cybersecurity and information technology, the question for, and especially AI, the question for compliance and a safe security posture, especially in information technology, is a big question mark for companies. Because you have to imagine all of these big companies are implementing all of these types of technologies and integrations, as well as AI and all of these different types of things that basically help the productivity as well as the operations of a company. Because you are integrating all these different types of information systems and technology, the question is, how do we integrate these things safely? And hence why the regulators create and develop specific frameworks that basically answer these type of questions, right? Now, the first framework is the ISO 27001. Now, if you have never heard of ISO 27001, just imagine it's a international standard organization for information systems that includes all type of IT and IT&S, meaning all type of information technology that basically contributes to the operations of a company, right? More to that later. Then we have the COVID 2019 framework, or the COVID framework, which is also a combination of governance and management controls. Then we have SOC 2, we have PDPA and SDLC. Now, I won't go through these specific frameworks specifically because it's probably a lot of stuff and I need another video for that. But do understand that as a GRC specifically in cybersecurity and IT, these are mainly the frameworks that you should and will focus on. right? But before that, I want you guys to understand like why I do GRC and why GRC is so popular nowadays. And that's mainly because you have to understand that GRC, like as a word as itself, has little to do with information and technology. It is by the sheer demand of technological advancement that compliance is heavily focused on technology because, I mean, guys, look at AI and all of the technology that came out of nowhere. Because of that, a lot of the compliance frameworks nowadays is more focused towards information technology, and hence why we have more GRC people that come from more IT backgrounds. Now, I know GRC consultants myself who have a law background, who were in finance before, and we're also in IT directly, right? And so these are three areas where GRC consultants also come from. But as I mentioned earlier, the most famous one is IT. But it's not uncommon that you see law and finance people as well, right? And mainly because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. Okay? And so now your question is, okay, now that I understand that there are different types of careers in GRC, I know that the big companies have that. I know the frameworks that exist for GRC. Now the next question is, how do I get into GRC, or what specific certificates do I need so that I can actually get employed, right? And so the certificates I definitely recommend you to do to get into GRC, and it is certificates that my colleagues have, that GRC consultants have, that Big Four consultants have, that banks, cybersecurity people have. And so the following certificate is firstly the ISC2CC. Now the ISC2CC is basically a foundational certificate in cybersecurity, very similar to CompTIA Security Plus, but I must say this is perhaps such or a really valuable start for me because ISC2CC is not that hard in comparison to CompTIA Security Plus, but it does cover all the domains in cybersecurity that are needed, especially for GRC. The second type of certificate is the CompTIA Security Plus. Now I say CompTIA Security Plus is a bit more difficult, not because like the topics are more in depth. I think that the topics are very similar. ISC2CC and CompTIA Security Plus are very, very similar, and I have both, by the way. But CompTIA Security Plus, in my eyes, is a little bit harder because the benchmark for passing is at least 850 out of 1,000. For ISC2CC, you need at least, if I'm not mistaken, 700 out of 1,000, meaning 70%. But for CompTIA Security Plus, you need at least 85%. Now, the next certificate that is perhaps very, very important and imperative, and if you get this certificate, you are confirmed to have a good career in GRC and compliance, is the ISO 27001, either auditor or implementer. Now, my colleagues specifically have implementer because I think they are more interested into actually implementing 27001 technical controls, but either one is very good and either one can definitely guarantee you to get actually the GRC job. Right. The next certificate is the Google Cybersecurity Plus. Now, I don't have this Cybersecurity Plus, but I know a lot of people that have that certificate and they do get good jobs with that certificate alone. But if you're thinking of getting Google Cybersecurity Plus, then I would either recommend you to do it together with either one of these or COBIT, or a specific compliance framework like ISO 27001. Right? Because Google Cybersecurity Plus, again, I can't comment so much because I've never taken it personally, but I just believe that IC2CC and CompTIA Security Plus have more value, and that's mainly because I just see it within my company and see how many people actually have this certificate, and it's not a lot. But yeah, the final one, which is very similar to ISO 27001, is the COBIT. And now, why COBIT specifically? It depends. I wouldn't say in APAC, Asia Pacific region, is not that common, but in European region, especially with the European Act and the European controls, COBIT 2019, or the older ones, COBIT 5 before, it was actually called COBIT 5, 2019 is the upgraded version. And so previously, COBIT certificate, a professional certificate in COBIT 2019 or COBIT 5 is also a very good foundational certificate for you to get into GRC. Now, if you ask me if either one or two certificates, I would either ask your ISC2CC or CompTIA Security Plus. You can always do the ISO 27001 later, because here's the secret: companies will actually pay for that because it's so expensive. So don't do it right away. And so with that being said, I hope I answered everything. I'm a little bit tired, guys, I admit. Had a long day at work. But if you did enjoy this video, or if you're more interested specifically in GRC, you can just leave a comment in the comment section. Otherwise, I'll make another video specifically talking about, I don't know, a framework, or you know, how to actually get, I don't know, into a Big Four or into a bank. If you want a video like that, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.